Imagine you're sitting in a quiet room. There's a desk, a switch, a man in a lab coat. He tells you this is for science. You're not the one being tested, you're just helping. In the next room, someone is strapped to a chair. You can't see them, but you can hear them. The man in the lab coat asks you to read a question. The person answers incorrectly. He nods at the switch. Please administer the shock. You hesitate. He calmly repeats, the experiment requires that you continue. So, you press it. This wasn't a horror movie. It was a real psychological experiment conducted in the early 1960s. The psychologist behind it was Stanley Milgram. His question was simple. How far would ordinary people go if an authority figure told them to hurt someone? The results were not simple. They were disturbing. Participants believed they were part of a study about memory and learning. One person was the teacher, the other was the learner. The learner was actually an actor. The teacher was the real subject. Every wrong answer meant a higher voltage shock. 15 volts, 30 volts, 45. It kept climbing. The switches were labeled with words like moderate shock, then strong shock, then danger, severe shock, and finally, simply XXX, which is never comforting. At around 75 volts, the learner grunted. At 120 volts, he complained loudly. At 150 volts, he demanded to be released. By 300 volts, he was screaming. By 315 volts, there was silence. No more answers, no more protests, just nothing. And many participants kept going. They looked uncomfortable, they sweated, they laughed nervously. Some trembled. But when the man in the lab coat said, "Please continue," most of them did. 65% of participants went all the way to the maximum voltage, 450 volts, the final switch. The one marked with those three chilling letters, XXX. Here's the part that makes it worse. These weren't cruel people. They weren't criminals. They were ordinary men from the community, office workers, salesmen, fathers, neighbors, the kind of people who would hold the door open for you. And yet, under instructions from an authority figure, they were willing to deliver what they believed were potentially lethal shocks. Why? Milgram concluded that people enter what he called an agentic state. That's when you stop seeing yourself as responsible for your actions. You see yourself as an instrument, a tool carrying out someone else's wishes. It's not me, your brain whispers. I'm just following orders. If that phrase sounds familiar, it should. After the Second World War, many officials on trial used the same defense. They claimed they were simply obeying authority. Milgram wanted to understand how that was possible, how ordinary people could participate in extraordinary cruelty. His experiment suggested something uncomfortable. The capacity was already there. But obedience isn't always loud and dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle. A boss tells you to stay silent about something unethical. A government insists a policy is necessary for security. A crowd moves in one direction, and you follow because everyone else is moving too. Authority doesn't always wear a lab coat. Sometimes it wears a suit, or a uniform, or a confident smile. There's another twist. When participants saw others refuse to continue, obedience dropped sharply. Courage, it turns out, is contagious, but so is compliance. When you feel alone in your doubt, you're more likely to silence it. When you see someone else resist, your brain suddenly remembers you have a choice. Critics later questioned the ethics of the experiment. Participants were stressed. Some were visibly shaken. Today, such a study would face serious restrictions. But despite the controversy, the findings echoed through psychology for decades, and they've been replicated in different forms across cultures. The percentages shift slightly. The pattern remains. Authority has power, more than we like to admit. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of us believe we would refuse. We imagine standing up. We picture ourselves pushing the chair back and saying, "No." We like that version of ourselves. It's heroic, clean, certain. But in the actual experiment, Many participants also predicted they would stop early. They were wrong. Obedience doesn't feel evil in the moment. It feels procedural, step by step, 15 volts at a time. You don't jump from 0 to 450. You climb, gradually. Each switch only slightly worse than the last. Each decision only slightly harder to justify, until suddenly, you're somewhere you never planned to be. So what do we do with this? We can't just eliminate authority. Societies need structure. Hospitals need hierarchy. Airplanes need captains. But blind obedience? That's different. That's dangerous. Maybe the lesson isn't that humans are monsters. Maybe it's that humans are flexible. Painfully flexible. We adapt to expectations. We conform to roles. We obey when obedience feels normal. Which means the responsibility doesn't disappear. It just hides behind uniforms and titles. The next time someone says, "The experiment requires that you continue," pause. Look at the switch. Ask who benefits. Ask who gets hurt. Ask whether you're acting or just reacting. Because history has shown us something unsettling. Ordinary people can do extraordinary harm. Not because they're evil, but because they're obedient. And the scariest part? You don't find out who you are in theory. You find out when your finger is already hovering over the switch. Let's just hope you choose differently.